Okay, let's face it, young men today are fucked. Anybody who's growing up needs a good and positive role model. In an ideal world, this would be their parents, but unfortunately, a lot of people will have crappy and/or absent parents, meaning it forced both characters in media and public figures to pick up the slack and guide the next generation in a positive direction. As a child of the early 2000s, I looked up to people like Brendan Fraser, who played strong and courageous characters that also had a soft side to them. Or I looked up to characters like Batman, who, yes, while scary and imposing, fought to protect the weak and vulnerable. But who are the role models for the young men of today? Depressingly, it's people like Andrew Tate, who treat women like they're objects and tell young boys that being a quote-unquote real man is about being the biggest and most arrogant dickhead in the room and telling empathy to take a very long hike. This sort of influence has led to a noticeable increase in misogyny amongst schoolboys. Young men need positive role models right now more than ever, both in real life people and in media, and a character that sticks out to me as a great example of what it means to be a good man is Geralt of Rivia. I've stated in a previous video that I think Geralt is the greatest video game character of all time. I still stand by that. What I've not really heard anyone talking about before is how Geralt is an amazing example of non-toxic masculinity. Let's jump in and examine the character of Geralt and why he is a shining example of positive masculinity. Just 3 quick notes before we start. 1, this will only be based on The Witcher 3. I may use examples from the extended lore, but for the most part we'll be staying in that one game because it's the only one I've played. 2, this video will contain full spoilers for The Witcher 3, so be warned. And 3, this video will be discussing some heavy topics like domestic abuse and SA, so if you're sensitive to these kind of things, then please proceed with caution. The thing that strikes me first when looking at this topic isn't actually Geralt himself, but the world that he exists in. The setting of The Witcher shares a lot of elements with our own world. You can very much think of it as just medieval Europe with fantasy elements thrown in. And because of that, it also contains a lot of the problems that we have in our own world, especially in places like Velen, which is frankly an absolute shithole, ravaged by war with evil lurking around every corner. Because this world is generally pretty awful most of the time, Geralt stands out as one of the only few people who isn't a selfish dick 99% of the time. He's a pretty stand-up guy who will generally make the right decision. A great example of this comes from the very first Witcher 3 trailer, aptly named Killing Monsters, where he sees this woman about to be hanged, and even though his mentor says to leave himself out of it, Geralt just cannot help himself from intervening and saving her. And you see multiple instances of this throughout the game, of Geralt risking his own life to stand up and save the weak and downtrodden. Such as when you return to Crow's Perch after the return to Crookback Bog quest, and you see the Baron's men terrorizing the townspeople. Geralt will risk his own life to save these people, not for any kind of reward or personal gain, but because he believes it's the right thing to do. Because at his core, that's who he is and why I find him so interesting. He's a good person in a crappy world, but that never stops him from making the right decision. And to me, that makes you far more of a quote-unquote real man than any dude bro who tells you that helping people makes you weak and soft. Also remember that this world absolutely hates witchers and generally anybody seen as non-human, which sadly also reflects our own world. But despite all the prejudice and hardship he faces, he doesn't let it affect his morals. Yes, it may have given him his cold, emotionless exterior as he plays into the fact that witches supposedly have no emotions.
Oh, all God, help a poor wretch in need. Pretty please.
But Geralt is still a very emotional person on the inside. Hell, the entire main quest of the game is almost entirely motivated by the love he has for Ciri and finding her. Just look at his face when he thinks that Ciri is dead. You can see the despair wash over him as he believes that his daughter, who he spent all this time searching for, is gone. This is also helped by the game's fantastic facial animations. To me, an important part of positive masculinity is being in touch with one's emotions and not being afraid to appear vulnerable. You hear it all the time with people saying shit like, real men don't cry and suck it up and be a real man. But all this does is make men not talk about their emotions. They bottle it up and then they don't get the help and support that they need. And then it's no wonder why you frequently see headlines like this. Something that needs to be addressed when discussing the character of Geralt is the fact that the player can make major decisions which will shift his personality in certain directions. He will always be Geralt, and you can't go as far to make him a murderous psychopath or anything, but you do have a certain degree of influence over him and the choices he makes. Such as this example where Geralt can tell the Baron to basically suck it up and be a man, which, as I explained a second ago, is a pretty damaging mindset to have.
Understand, Witcher? My child was dead.
Get hold of yourself. Men like you, when they break down, look downright pathetic.
You're a heartless bastard.
Whereas the other option makes Geralt sound a lot more sympathetic and caring.
I sympathize. I do.
Thank you. and know that I hope you find your city.
Geralt is very much an established character with multiple books selling up his personality, so often there is a much more obvious choice that he would make. And when discussing these kind of decisions in this video, I will be talking about the option that makes the most sense for the established character of Geralt of Rivia. If you're interested in what decisions are most likely to be canon, then check out an excellent video series by Neon Knight about every choice that Geralt would make based on his established character. I'll leave a link to it in the description. Moving on, we come to another aspect of positive masculinity that Geralt excels in, and that's his attitude towards women. Self-proclaimed alpha males, like Andrew Tate, preach that women are lesser than men in society and have a very particular and strict role to play, that of being the housewife who looks after the children and serves their husband. The world of The Witcher is very much like this as well, as was most of medieval Europe. However, Geralt is very much the exception to this. He treats everyone equally, no matter their gender, race, or anything surface level like that. Instead, he judges people purely based on their actions, which any decent person would do. He has many female friends throughout the games, and never treats them as any lesser than a man. There are also multiple instances of him saving and standing up for women, such as helping a random lady on the side of the road who asked him to help repair some religious shrines that had been vandalized, or when he protects the White Orchard innkeep who is being attacked. Geralt could definitely be a flirty womanizer at times. However, unlike Andrew Tate, he actually understands the word consent. Most of the time, Geralt is flirting back with people who are also flirting with him, and he never at any point forces himself on anyone. This is obviously the bare minimum to being a good person, but in the world of The Witcher, it especially stands out as during the war, there are sadly a lot of instances of women being taken against their will. To better illustrate the best aspects of Geralt's masculinity, we can look at a character who demonstrates some of the worst aspects of toxic masculinity, that being the Bloody Baron. In terms of an actual character, he's one of the best written people in any video game ever, and there's a real depth to him you don't often see. But my god, this dude illustrates everything that I'm talking about when it comes to what some people think a quote-unquote real man looks like. First off, he's physically abused his wife for the majority of their relationship and takes very little accountability for his actions, instead choosing to blame it on his drinking problem, and even blames it on her, saying that she pushes his buttons, which is frankly a pathetic excuse for what he has done to his family. Secondly, he feels that he has ownership over his wife and daughter. At the start of the quest, he tells Geralt that his family has mysteriously disappeared and he asks help in finding them. It's only when Geralt learns of the Baron's true nature that he begins telling Geralt the whole story. That he knew the whole time that they had run away to escape him because of his drinking and abuse of them. You also learn that this isn't the first time this has happened, as many years ago Anna had attempted to leave him by taking their infant daughter to Anna's new lover, whom she'd be having an affair with. Now obviously I don't condone cheating, but what the Baron does next is unforgivable when he slaughters the new man and forces them back into living with him. It's from this point on that Anna begins trying to kill the Baron multiple times, and he used this as justification for his physical abuse of her, despite the fact that it's entirely his fault. In his mind, he owns his wife and daughter, and they're not allowed to leave him as he has the power over them. This is obviously an extremely toxic mindset that strips both of these women of any agency they have. And you see this kind of thing in a lot of abusive relationships, where it's a, if I can't have you, then nobody can attitude. And even after they leave him again to escape him for a second time, he sends Geralt out to find them so he can bring them back. He claims multiple times to be sorry for what he has done and wants them back so he can make things right. But the sheer fact that he's not allowing them to make the decision to leave him clearly shows that he has not changed at all and still does not value their autonomy. Somebody who has actually had a change of heart would realise that they have left for a reason and accept the fact that it's entirely their own actions that drove their family out. Yet the Baron continues to take very little responsibility for what he has done. If you've ever been in any kind of abusive relationship, then first off, I'm so sorry and I really hope you're in a better and safer place now. But you will know that these people will use every excuse under the sun to try and justify their actions, and then also claim to have a change of heart and not be that person anymore, but then go right back into doing it in the exact same way. An apology doesn't mean shit if you continue that abusive cycle and make absolutely zero efforts to change. By the end of his questline, he promises to his daughter that he will stop drinking and be a better man. But without proof that he will actually change, this rings absolutely hollow. This was all pretty heavy stuff, but the reason I illustrated it is to show what can happen when a man thinks he owns people based on a perceived gender hierarchy. And the reason this relates to Geralt is he has the ability multiple times to call out the Baron's hypocrisy and tell him that he is indeed a piece of shit.
I know your wife miscarried. Was that before or after you beat her to a pulp?
What the f*** are you suggesting?
Don't play me for a fool. You'd been beating them for years. Finally, they'd had enough and fled. Sound about right?
You still think me rotten to the core. A base bastard, don't you? You believe I alone am at fault for what happened here?
Actually, that's exactly what I think.
The world might seem black and white to you witches, but for us common folk, it's shades of grey. As is my family's story.
He doesn't fall for the Baron's sob story and feel sorry for him. Instead, he does what any good man does and holds other men accountable for their actions. I love the fact that when Geralt finds the Baron's daughter Tamara, there isn't even an option to try and convince her to go back to him. This shows that unlike the Baron, Geralt values her ability to make her own decisions and sympathizes with her situation.
If the bloody Baron sent you to fetch his daughter, you'd best face it. You will fail in your task.
I appreciate your concern, but I don't need it. As for Tamara, she can make her own decisions.
He's working for the Baron only to get the information that he needs, and if Ciri wasn't involved, I doubt he would even help this guy out once he learns who he really is. I've seen a lot of videos and comments describing the Baron as a tragic character, who's not a bad guy, but just a man who has made some poor choices. And the fact that this is even a thought in anybody's mind is very disturbing. The Baron deserves absolutely zero sympathy, as all his hardships and family problems are his own doing. He's very much the epitome of the phrase, "Look what you made me do." It's always someone else's fault. A good man takes responsibility for the things they do and say and owns it, not deflecting to other people to make themselves feel better. He's an amazingly well-written character, and his questline really helps to show the best aspects of Geralt's character. By the way, can we talk about how amazing this game is? I was only playing through the Velen section to gather footage for this video, but I really got sucked into it again. I kept getting constantly distracted by interesting side quests that I'd never played before, and running around to all the question marks on the map. I also went for a sign build, mostly focusing on Jörden, which I'd hardly ever used, but once I got the skill that turns it into a magical trap, it completely changed how I play the combat and I had a hell of a lot of fun. Additionally, I genuinely had to stop myself from playing Gwent with every single NPC in the game, otherwise I would never make any progress. To try and stop this, I didn't buy any of the cards from the merchants, so I couldn't play properly. Only, this made things worse, and it turned into a game of trying to beat them with only the default deck you get at the start. You can tell by my notes how truly Gwent addicted I am. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, then please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel, and in return, I will teach you the secret magical arts of lesbomancy.
My favourite type of magic. Lesbomancy.
Going back to our boy Geralt, let's look at some more instances of him being an absolute lad. What the fuck is this script? Witchers generally have a code that they don't work for free, which makes perfect sense, as they are risking their lives every time they go out to battle a monster, and should be paid for their services. Geralt himself also has an extra rule, which is that he doesn't take out contracts on the sentient monsters, so long as they're not harming anyone. This comes into play during the Skellige's Most Wanted quest, as Geralt is ambushed by a group of monsters who call him a murderer. However, if throughout the game you've made the decision to be kind and save certain monsters, you can use this as evidence that you're not out to harm them. This is a great moment and shows that in his heart, Geralt is a kind person who looks out for others. Like when he comes across a group of starving kids in the woods and he can offer them some food. He has nothing to gain from helping these kids, but he does it because he's a good person. And to me, that's one of the qualities of a quote-unquote real man. A few times in this video I've used quote-unquote. I'm generally not a fan of traditional gender roles, and I find them to be quite outdated. And whilst I personally don't connect with the term masculinity very much, I fully appreciate there's a lot of people who identify as male who want to show more masculine traits. My message to you is to make sure that those are the good ones. A masculine person can be kind, they can be brave, they can help pick up people when they're down and help make the world a better place. Don't get sucked into the whole alpha male bullshit that gets peddled around that only exists to make you feel inferior so they buy their course or products or whatever. Geralt can make the choice to be a better man, and so can you. If you're interested in learning more about positive lifestyle tips, then I highly recommend giving Josh Strife Hayes a watch, and especially checking out his clips channel, Josh Strife Says. He's an incredibly well-spoken guy, and I genuinely feel like I learn something good from every video I see of him. His clip where he talks about the perception of steroids and its effects on young men was very much the inspiration for this video, as he discusses the character of Aragorn and how he's an example of a good man, and this made me think of Geralt, hence this video. I'll leave a link down to his video in the description for you guys to check out. But other than that, thank you so much for watching today. If you're interested in more Witcher 3 content, then click here to check out my video on The Witcher 3 and how it compares to Skyrim. If you're interested in more kind of game design theory style videos, then click here to check out my video on video game hunger bars. Thanks guys.